Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Up-Beet Dietitians podcast.
Hello, guys. Welcome to our Americans, our Europeans, our Australians. Everyone's welcome here, and everyone gets to eat food, and they should be eating food that they enjoy.
Yeah,
I'm making this intro on a whim. Welcome to
I know. I
all,
was
is the
gonna
bottom
say,
line.
and if you're wondering why we listed those, it's because today we're talking about banned ingredients, a very hot topic. But
Banned in air quotes.
yeah, not, yeah.
We'll get there.
But before we get into it, make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube. We have all these fun visuals over there, exclusive content available on Substack. Link to that in any of our descriptions anywhere. And we're gonna get into this. Before we hear any like right off the bat, someone's be like, you're getting paid by Big Food, you're getting paid by Big Red 40.
Nar.
None of this is sponsored. This is all just us providing information in research.
What are our mottos? Critical thought, and what's the other one?
The horrors will persist, and so
Well,
shall
there's that one
we.
too. We had two things. It was like when you search our name, they'll say like critical thinker and something else. I forget what it was. I don't know.
Oh, something with diversity.
There was that one too. This one was more recent. It was like a couple weeks ago. We said we're
It
gonna have
wasn't the natural selection one, was it?
yes, when you said that natural
Oh,
selection will get them or whatever.
okay, okay. I'm like, we have many mottos
We have a
apparently.
lot of mottos. Most of them come down to us thinking very highly of ourselves.
Don't worry,
Okay.
guys. We get humbled by our partners all the time.
Yes. And to be fair, when it comes to these topics, we do
We
know what we're talking
also,
about.
it's fine if we feel confident since we have like
Yeah.
essentially 5, 6 years of education specifically in it and
Yeah.
continuing education every year after that. So basically 11 years of education if you add up all the continuing ed we've been
Ew.
doing. I don't even
Yeah.
know how yeah, that's kind of gross. But anyway,
Anyway, you guys have probably heard the claim that like certain countries ban ingredients. This is usually stated by those who are trying to prove that those ingredients are unhealthy or unsafe. So today we're going to debunk that. Is it actually true that if, let's say, Red 40 is banned in a different country, that it's unsafe to consume? We've got a list of facts. So if someone were to say this to you, oh, but let's just keep saying Red 40 as an example. If Red 40 is banned in Europe, then we shouldn't be allowed to eat it here in America. We have a few things you guys can kind of say back, and we have these kind of categorized. The first one, pretty overarching idea here, is something being banned in another country does not actually tell us anything about the ingredient safety. Like those two terms aren't synonymous, and there are many reasons why an ingredient could be banned. We'll go over a few today. And different countries have different regulatory agencies, and they all have their own different standards and practices. So, like the people who are making the decisions in the US are not the same people making these decisions of what foods and ingredients and all of that is allowed in. Like today, Europe will be kind of the main counterpart today. But of course, I'm sure there's arguments too about like Australia and other countries that people compare the America or North America to.
yeah.
Canada, which I know is North America, but sometimes I
Mhm.
feel like even Canada and the US will get compared for their
Dicey.
ingredients. Yeah. Yeah. Dicey.
Another thing we'll note is when people argue that long lists of ingredients
I hate this
are,
one.
or not to like eat anything that has more than 5 ingredients. A long list means that it's a bad food, you shouldn't eat it. Once again, this comes a lot down to the labeling regulations in different countries. Like, for example, we're going to use like the United States versus a lot of European countries. The United States has to, for like, I'm thinking like B vitamins off the top of my head, they have to list the B vitamin and then the vitamin, like the chemical name
Yeah.
of it as well. That's part of the labeling regulation, where in some European countries, the ones that always get brought up in these comparisons whenever they show side by side comparisons of how many ingredients there are, they are not required to list these things. So if you see like flavocin or yeah, is that how you say it? Okay, yeah. We all know I can't say anything right.
We can read, we can interpret, but we can't speak.
Not speak. Um, or like biosyn. Like they have to include these because that's part of the labeling regulation. So it
Exactly.
adds an extra word for each word, so it's going to double.
It's going to be a longer ingredient list. Yeah. And like another example along with that one is enriched products, for example, in the US, they might end up listing all the vitamins and minerals that are enriched, like making the product enriched. But the UK, for example, might just say like enriched flour without listing the actual like vitamins and minerals that it's enriched with. So you would see a shorter ingredient list, but the US is actually giving you more detail, which I would think wellness culture would appreciate, kind of getting more insight into what's actually in the product.
Yeah.
And it's also
But
worth noting too, like the different taste preferences of like someone in, I don't know, Germany versus the US. We have different palates, different things we like to eat. Also, ingredient availability. I have an example we'll get to later with high fructose corn syrup, but that plays a role too. Like we have different ingredients that are easily accessible and economically viable that we might rely on here in the US versus other countries. So that all plays a role too in like what the actual product formulation ends up being. And it's not necessarily just like the US hates its citizens and wants to make us all chronically ill.
yeah. And we will talk about later about general health status because everyone likes to talk about how much healthier Europeans are compared to Americans, and we're gonna dive a lot deeper into that. But we're not there yet.
We'll get there.
Our next
Okay.
one we kind of talked about already. If you can't pronounce an ingredient, it's deemed unhealthy or unsafe. If you've been here a little bit, you know we can't even pronounce things properly, and we literally went to school for this. And this does not speak upon how safe it is. It's just is it a linguistics thing? Is it
I think
like,
so. I think so.
we have a great example that we'll include. So watch on YouTube if you aren't already.
Incentive.
That lists out all the ingredients, and there's a picture of a banana. And you're maybe like wondering, oh, like maybe this is a banana product, maybe this is whatever it is, but these are all the chemicals in just a all natural banana plucked off the tree. And if someone were to show, if bananas, imagine bananas come with this food label, like it's attached, like it's a little tag,
Bobby Flave City would
you would flip
poop his
out.
pants. Yeah.
He'd be like, look at all this stuff they're putting in bananas when this is just like the chemical breakdown.
Organic or conventional, I'll note too.
Yes. And when we're saying the chemicals in foods, that's not a bad thing. Like everything is made up of chemicals. We are all made up of chemicals. The earth is made up of chemicals. Chemicals are not bad. That's just how chemistry works. We might have to like return to like high school chemistry for a refresher.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys have probably seen this image. It's a super duper long list and it's literally just a banana, which of course there are the anti-fruit people who will say, well, yeah, carbs are terrible for you. But literally, no matter what food that a diet says is allowed, there's going to be an insanely long, if you really break it down, an insanely long chemical ingredient list because, like Emily just said, everything is chemicals.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the different names of ingredients because that's another big one, especially when talking about
Yeah.
red 40. I feel like that's the
Hmm.
biggest, that's one of the biggest ones that I hear about slash make content about is red 40 being quote unquote banned. And we have a list we'll go through of commonly mentioned ones that are claimed to be banned that we'll kind of debunk. But anyway, it's very possible, especially in this case of red 40, that ingredients just go by different names in the US versus let's say Europe again, for example, here. So like red 40, you won't find the name red 40 on an ingredient list in, let's keep saying Germany. You'll find an E number. So like E129 is the equivalent of red 40 in Europe. Another example is like you'll see natural flavoring a lot on American products. They might say something like herb extracts, for example. So it's just a different way of like labeling
Labeling.
the same thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's literally it. Like red 40, you just see in the news a whole lot. People talk so much about it. And since you don't see it on a label in Europe, you might assume it's banned, but it's literally just a different name.
Yeah. And I think I don't want to go too much into this, but I think this really feeds into the like hyper individualistic epidemic I would
Yeah,
say that is happening
we can
in
call it that.
America where we make everything about ourselves and we think everyone else follows all the same rules as us. Like the FDA does not regulate Europe. That's why, like, it's an American organization.
Right. Do we have our
Yeah.
flaws? Yeah, you guys know if you've been here that we're not the most patriotic bunch around here. Listen to our episode 2 weeks ago or whatever it was. But
Yeah.
we can at least understand that different countries have different regulatory agencies and they
Yeah.
are allowed to have their different rules. And we'll get to the different assessments they use to make these like recommendations of what ingredients are allowed.
Mhm.
But yeah, like all countries just do it differently. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Interesting enough, also, I think this does not get talked about like ever. Is there also ingredients that are are banned, not allowed, not recommended in the US, but are allowed in Europe? And there's actually more. I'm pretty sure that Europe allows more artificial dyes
Mm-hmm.
than the US.
I think they allow, from the last thing I had read, they allow 16 more than the US, and nine of those are synthetic or artificial, which is what everyone's
Hmm.
always most scared of, even though, as we'll get to, those are actually the most evidence based usually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, for example, coloring E153 is allowed in food in Europe, but it's not allowed in the US food products. Another one I just learned about was in M&Ms in the UK. They include shea fat and palm fat to make their chocolate, which they do call chocolate. But we have different standards in the US of what can be classified as chocolate. And so if our M&Ms are the exact same with the amount of like shea fat and palm fat, we could no longer call it chocolate because of the different regulations that we have of what chocolate actually is and like what amount and ratios has to be in it.
Yeah.
It's just different. It's not good versus bad. It's just different rules and regulations in each country.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the risk and
Yes.
hazard, unless you have more to say about this
No.
ingredient thing. Okay. This is very interesting. So, this might partially explain why there are these discrepancies between what is allowed, banned, whatever in these different countries. So, there's something called risk assessment and hazard assessment. And we'll keep using Europe as an example today. Europe uses a hazard based approach, assessment approach, when looking at the safety of ingredients, and the US uses a risk based approach. So, for example, what this looks like in real life, we know that formaldehyde is a big, scary sounding ingredient and it can be hazardous to humans. However, our bodies naturally produce it. We consume it in foods in small amounts, like in apples and pears. So, at the dose that we're consuming it, formaldehyde is not a risk. And since the US uses a risk based approach to assess these hazards or the safety, we are not going to ban formaldehyde in the US because at the dose we're consuming it, it's not a risk. Other examples, I think these are funny, but they paint the picture well. Driving a car is a hazard, but driving a car in a blizzard is a risk. So we're not going to say that driving a car is like inherently risky. I mean, yeah, it is, but it's not going to be banned to drive a car because of that risk. But you might have more of that risk if you are driving in a blizzard. Another example is like shaving your face is a hazard. You could get cut. You can cut your face open a little bit. But shaving a bear, that's going to be a risk. That's going to be a lot more of a risk than shaving your face would be.
I think that's like one of the most important parts is just like understanding the approach is different. And it doesn't mean that, like, I mean, shaving a bear is very risky,
Yeah.
but you aren't banned from it. You just got to
Yeah,
be educated on what you're going into. And then,
exactly.
like, a blizzard, there are smart things to do. And, like, a lot of it, with like the formaldehyde, at least, like a very, very scary word, very, very scary word. But it naturally occurs in our foods where, like, if you pulled up an ingredient list of an apple, naturally picked off the tree, whatever, fresh, natural, non-GMO, whatever you want to throw
Organic.
out there, organic, grass-fed. um,
It's been apple.
fat burning apple.
Metabolism
uh,
boosting.
it's going to have formaldehyde in the ingredient list because it's naturally occurring there. So I know I've seen a lot of people argue against the dose is the poison argument. It's like we shouldn't be having any of it at
Exactly.
all. But there's a lot more things in our food and just naturally occurring in your body than you know. And that's fine. That's why we have specialists in these different areas researching and looking into this.
Yes. And like things like Red 40, aspartame, we're going to talk about in a minute. Like these are all very well studied. And sure, if you want to not consume them, you can also live a very happy, healthy life, but you can also consume them and live a very happy, healthy life at the same time because chances are you're not consuming them at a rate that would be a risk to your health.
Yeah.
Good segue, I guess, into our like actual examples.
Hmm.
Red 40 does tend to be the biggest one I hear a lot. We kind of already debunked that. It just has a different name,
Yeah.
E129. We also
Hmm.
already said that there are more approved food colorings in the in Europe than the US. Talk to us about the hyperactivity thing. I feel like that is another huge claim.
Yeah. So a lot of people around it's very frustrating around how ADHD and ADD just get diagnosed just left and right with kids at least when they're just energetic kids, but also test your kids. Make sure that you know what special help maybe they do need.
Yeah.
But a lot of, besides the whole red 40 is a poison argument, is red 40. The other argument is red 40 increases hyperactivity in children. And there is not a significant, there is research around this. It's because this is not that new of a claim, but there is no significant evidence that's showing a correlation between the two. I saw one video, I hate to be like Kenny, you might have seen it, where this lady took out all the food dyes in her kids' diets and started reintroducing them and was like when they ate the yellow one, they felt happier, or when they ate blue food dye, they felt sadder. And I'm like, there are other things that, okay, one, like, was there something else going on in their life? Were they properly fed in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Or like the
Also,
visual impact of our food. Like there's so much science behind that too. Like the way our food looks impacts how we're going to react to it. And I'm sure these different colors can impact, like just from the sight of them, not because of the chemical reaction, but like just the sight of those colors can impact how we feel while eating them.
yes. So it was one of, it's an anec her study was an anecdotal study. It's her children.
N equals
Now,
one.
yeah. And just a big thing, it's just there's not enough research to say take out red 40 or else it'll increase, people have been saying it increases your risk of developing ADHD, which that's not how ADHD is developed in
Yeah.
any capacity.
And to those who might say, well, why do we even need it at all? Just like completely get it out of the food system if it's not necessary. First of all, it's there for a reason. Again, I'm not advocating just injecting red 40 into your veins. Obviously, more is not better of any of these kind of things. Um, but again, the dose makes the poison. And also, they are used because we live in a capitalistic society. Like people need to sell their products, and red 40 makes things pretty along with other food colorings. So they're well studied. So we like know they're safe and we're consuming them, but they do serve a purpose in in the world of big food that we live in. And again, no
Is
one's
it?
paying us to say like it's a good thing to have red 40 in our food, but that's why it's happening. And it's not just because they want to make you get ADHD or whatever. It's
They
just
want to
because
make the food more appealing typically. They want you to
exactly.
buy the food. It's it's a result of what the consumers responded to.
Exactly. Exactly. Um and the alternative tends to be, oh, just do like natural coloring then, like use herbs and spices to color our food. that's all fine and dandy, but one, that's way more expensive because they have to like resource those things. Also, though, the natural colors typically aren't as well studied as their synthetic counterparts, like let's say again, red 40, for example. So, using, I don't really have a good example, but like maybe turmeric, I don't know, using that as a food coloring again is much more expensive than using red 40 or whatever the orange name is. But also, it is not as well studied as red 40 is. We have so much evidence about red 40 being safe in the dose that it's usually consumed. We
Yeah.
can have allergies much more at a much more high prevalence to these natural alternatives than we do to the synthetic ones. Okay, seed oils. It
I'm
doesn't even feel
sick of
like
the
a
seed
real word.
oils.
I feel like whenever I say it, it doesn't even feel real. It's just like this made up thing that's coming out of my mouth. Okay, some will
Yeah.
claim that seed oils are banned in Europe. This simply is not true. They are using canola oil, they're using sesame oil, they're using all those things in Europe as well. I will note there is one thing that's different. We've mentioned again these authorities, these regulatory agencies, and how they all kind of do their own thing. The European Food Safety Authority does closely monitor the levels of erucic acid, which is a omega-9 monounsaturated fatty acid in canola oil, and it does set limits on its content in food products. So it's not banned. Canola oil is used. We've discussed it many times before about how it can be a heart healthy oil, yada, yada, yada. But just like anything else, there can be components of it. Like, again, the apples and formaldehyde example. Like, if you had 4,000 apples, you probably would have too much formaldehyde in your system and it could be toxic. If you had 8 cups of canola oil in one day, you probably would have too much of this erucic acid and your heart would not be happy with that. So I don't know. They do set these safe levels of this acid in Europe, but if I had to guess, you're likely not consuming anywhere near the limit of
Yeah.
it.
And I could like maybe back up the argument that like we should be putting safe levels around it. But typically the opposite argument isn't like let's limit it, it's like let's get rid of it completely,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
that's not what they are doing. It's very similar to a lot of different arguments that they'll have where like even the little bit is deadly. Well, Europe is having more than just a little bit and they're just fine.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this next one
I,
too, I talk about
these
constantly.
next
Oh,
ones, I'm just like,
I'm so tired. Okay, artificial sweeteners, otherwise known as non-nutritive sweeteners, things like aspartame, sucralose, all those guys. The claim is that, again, like as a whole, they always say they're banned in Europe, so it shouldn't be allowed here. And yeah, there are some sweeteners that are banned in Europe, but there's also some that are banned in the US. Once again, just different regulatory agencies making their own rules. And you'll also notice too that just like the artificial colors, the different sweeteners will have an E number in front of them, just like in Europe. So they might just have a different name than you're used to if you're used to reading US labels.
yeah,
That's it.
it's not anything more advanced than that.
No one's trying to like pull one over on you. It's just different rules,
Hmm.
which is why experts exist to relay this information to you if you don't know these things already.
Yes, yes. And then our last one, classic.
Hmm.
This actually came up today with one of my patients where I just
Oh, interesting.
sat and smiled. High fructose corn syrup. It's not banned in Europe.
It's not
It's
banned.
used less because it's just not readily available and very like economically viable for them, but it's still there.
It still exists.
And also, this is not the same thing as like corn syrup. I feel like
Have you been seeing? I don't know if you followed her yet, but that one PhD dietitian I told you about, she's making a
she
lot
the
of
one that
content.
fought has been fighting.
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah. She's been her current fight these days is people saying that blah, 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 high fructose corn syrup should not be allowed in baby formula. And she's like, it's literally not in baby formula. Corn syrup is in baby formula because
Yes.
fructose isn't tolerated well by infants. It's fine for adults, as we'll get to, but it's a totally different thing. Like high fructose corn syrup is not the same thing as corn syrup. If you guys want the quick science lesson, corn syrup is nearly 100% glucose and like not much, if any, fructose at all. Whereas high fructose corn syrup, as the name suggests, it's available as either a 42% fructose or a 55% fructose. That 55% one is often what's used in like soda, and the 42% is used in like baked goods, things like that. But it's called high fructose because it's higher in fructose than corn syrup. But it's really not much different in terms of its fructose content compared to sucrose, aka table sugar, or honey. So sucrose, table sugar is about 50-50. And I forget honey's exact ratio, but it's pretty close to like the 40 to 45% ish, I think. So it's only called high fructose because of its comparison to corn syrup. But again, if we're eating it in realistic amounts, this fructose is not any more harmful than any of these other simple sugars, and they're all going to have similar metabolic effects when consumed in excess. That's the biggest thing, is how much of it in total are we consuming?
You will be
Huh,
fine.
it'll be fine. Your liver, unless otherwise compromised, is not going to just like start blowing dust from high fructose corn syrup.
No. So our last segment for today, because this is kind of like I feel like the overarching argument for all these like banned ingredients is people are like, well, Europeans are so much healthier than Americans, specifically like United States Americans. And they're using these ingredients to argue these claims. But let's delve into why maybe Europeans are quote unquote healthier. First one, quality of life, way better, exponentially better in general. We can look into their PTO policies. Companies tend to actually care about their employees more in Europe, where they
Imagine
give
that.
them adequate amount of PTO, where it's normal in some places to just go on like having like at least a month of PTO for the year, where that's normalized. Also maternity and paternity leave. They take care of their parents a lot better in Europe.
Literally, just today, I was talking to a coworker who just had a baby a few months ago. Oh, she did not get any paternity leave. So, like, imagine having a baby and like your partner just like not being available at all
Yeah. If
because
you
they
have
have to
like
go
a
to work.
partner that is supportive
Exactly. If
in
you're lucky
there.
enough for even that. Yeah. But
Yeah.
also, as the mom, what she was offered was 6 weeks of short term disability, which only pays out like 2/3 of your salary. And then for the other 6 weeks, she had to use her PTO. So now, come Christmas, which is next week as we're recording this, she has no PTO for the holidays. So she has to like work all throughout the Christmas holiday with her other two older kids and now a newborn.
For
It
as much
just
as like
sucks.
politicians in America are so concerned about the declining birth rates, it's things like this.
That's what I was just telling
Why?
her. I was like, because she knows I don't want to have kids, because I was talking about it earlier this week. And I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, that's literally why we're having this decline, is because people like me are seeing this and we're like, yeah, absolutely not. Like,
They
I'm
don't care about the
good.
parents, the healthcare. That's our next point. The healthcare accessibility in the United States compared to the majority of what did I just say?
Yogurt.
I'm getting hungry, so that's probably affecting my speech. In Europe is literally like day and night.
Yeah,
The horror stories that Americans share
every day.
about like not it's as simple as like not wanting to call an ambulance because it'll be like $2,000.
No,
Compared to
literally.
people will drive themselves to the ER. Whereas like in Europe, I know there are differences in like the wait lists. I've heard like some kind of scary stories about like how it's really hard to find
Yeah.
specialists or get on a specialist like wait list because the wait's so long. But things like calling an ambulance, getting like general basic care are much more attainable, and America does not. Speaking recent events, one of my biggest ops in life. Also, I've been using the word op more and it just feels right.
I don't think I know what that means. I'm not Gen Z
Opponent,
enough. Oh,
like my
okay.
biggest op or your America's
Why did I
op.
think it was opportunity? That's clearly not the right context.
Um, but my biggest op is medical insurance
Oh,
companies.
same. Literally
They,
just today, I had a patient. I was working in the ICU and we're looking at tube feedings. And I was educated on the fact that specialty tube feeds like Lucerna, which are best for those who have diabetes and like need to manage their blood sugars more closely, aren't always as well covered as something like Vital, for example, which is a non-specialty one. So like we have to consider like literally what the best tube feed is, not just based on the patient's need and their health and nutrition status, but
would
what
be
is
too
insurance
easy.
going to cover for
We
them?
have to play the insurance game, and it's
Yes.
so frustrating.
And like how
Like
many
insurance is
visits,
probably
like,
50% of the problem at least.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I spend way too much time just considering that. And it's maddening.
Yeah. But they can access quality healthcare much more easily in Europe. Another one, which is one of the biggest ones, in my opinion, is they have way more walkable cities.
I'm so jealous. As someone who lives in a place that is in no way walkable, like I can't walk anywhere, like anywhere, not a gas station, not a grocery store, nowhere. I
Yeah.
can't imagine just being able to do that.
And since it's so walking friendly, people are incorporating more physical activity. It's helping with their like physical activity or their physical health, mental health. Everything is better. And walking is like very low resistance, low impact, and they're all just walking around to everywhere they go. And public transport is also much better there.
Mm-hmm.
So they can get to places easier. Public
Also, not an
transport
option
in
here. My
I
patients
was
that
gonna say
do
ours is a
rely on,
mess.
yes, I have a few patients who do rely on like the local bus systems, and they either show up hours early to our appointment because they have no other like times available to use the bus, or they have to miss it, or they're super late because there's only so many options and it's just not reliable.
Yeah.
Ah,
Another one is attitudes around meal times. I think this is a huge difference where like America
yeah.
is very much like on the go, we're hustling, we're like it's like celebrated and normalized that people are like eating lunch at their desk and still working. Whereas a lot of European countries, and I feel like also the vibes there just seem better. They like actually sit down for meals, like they remove their distractions when they have meals with like, for example, I went to France when I studied abroad and it was normal for dinner to be like 3 hours.
That's wild to me.
And it was so chill and relaxing, and we were actually enjoying our food. And this can help you like gauge fullness cues better. This improves your relationship with food when you're not just seeing it as like a task to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's that goes a huge, very long ways. And I think we should all have longer breaks. And we should go to a 4-day work week.
Agreed.
That'd be
Um,
great.
what is your, I don't know if you want to speak of this on the podcast, but what is your lunch situation like at work?
So I have a very interesting lunch situation, and I've kind of brought it upon myself,
Mm,
where my office is very cold, and I liked, but I don't. This is literally such a me problem. We have a break room, and I get a 30 to 60 minute lunch if I would like. I typically do 30 minutes just because I'm like, I would rather get my work done
and
quickly,
leave
which
early. Yeah,
might be an effect, a side effect of the American hustle culture.
exactly.
But I'm not a fan of eating in the break room because it's very cold in there. And
Mm,
also, I don't have Wi-Fi connection in there, so I
yeah.
can't scroll on my little phone.
Yeah. What are you going to possibly do on lunch break without
I
Wi-Fi?
know. What am I gonna? I can download books, I guess, but
Yeah.
I also like don't want to talk to people on my break. And a lot of us are in the break room, so I will stay in my office. Or in the summer, we have like seating outside. I'll eat outside.
Yeah. That's nice.
It's a good environment. It's literally only because I want Wi-Fi and I don't want to be cold that I don't eat in the designated area.
Yeah.
How about you?
Most of the dietitians don't take their lunch. We all eat, but we just like eat while we work. And then we just have that half hour that we can leave early if our hours line up that way.
Hmm.
And honestly, I can't imagine not doing that because there's just so much to do. Like, I can't imagine
Yeah.
taking 30 minutes to not work, just seems unfathomable, which just proves your point of what you've been saying.
Yeah. It's like it's so normalized for them, a lot of people to just like in Europe to actually enjoy their lunch.
I'm literally eating while I'm charting.
Yeah.
Almost always, almost every single lunch.
Hmm. Yeah.
Not great.
Bobby's like that too, where he's like en route in his car, he'll eat in his car while he's working,
Oh yeah,
which does not feel like a nice, safe eating environment.
especially if you're eating certain things like a soup,
Yeah. Scary. And
unless you're drinking it, I guess.
yeah. I feel like this last point kind of ties into it.
Mm.
I always see it like, oh, I went to Italy and I ate pasta every single day, and the gluten didn't leave me bloated. Europe's so much healthier.
It's
The
the
gluten here
glyphosates in
is
America,
bad. One, you're probably walking way more.
which aids in
That alone is going to
digestion.
play a huge part. Your stress levels. No one's stress. There's always some degree of stress, I guess, on vacation, and depending on the person. But compared to your like everyday life in this world where we are working constantly and literally using all of the hours in the day to just try to complete all of our tasks, your stress plays a huge part on your digestive health. And when you're not stressed, it's a lot more relaxed and chill, and you're not going to have as many issues with bloating and whatnot.
Yep.
And also, like we were talking about, like time to eat, you're going out to eat, you're enjoying food, you're going to special places, there's excitement around the food, you're not seeing it as a task. That's going to also play into it. All of this
Uh,
to say, PTO, maternity, paternity leave, healthcare accessibility, walkable cities, attitudes around eating, access to public transportation. That one's me, I don't know how much, but like it still plays into it. Like when you can get around to other places and get to your, actually, yeah, it does play into
my
it.
patient I was telling
Yeah,
you
they
guys
can't get
about,
to
like they
your
can't get to their like by appointment
doctor's appointments.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is not the specific ingredients like Red 40 or E, what is it?
129.
E129 is not inhibiting your healthcare. It is the insurance companies, it is the lack of accessibility to quality healthcare and providers and like all this stupid in-network, out-of-network things,
Oh,
copays.
that was
It,
triggering for me.
sorry, sorry. It's not the ingredients. One, I will know people who think like America is set up against the citizens. I would agree with that. I do think we are, I don't know if I like the hospitals are business at the end of the day, which I agree with that. But I
Yeah,
don't, it's
profit my
not going through the
ass.
food. The insurance companies are much bigger. Are we going to get called into the FBI because we're
I
talking about
was
insurance right now?
literally just thinking that. I was just gonna say something.
Is YouTube gonna take us down?
Oh, not again.
All right. We're gonna stop talking about this because we don't want to go to jail for speaking the truth.
Should we tell them that our other video got taken down? If I whisper it, is it not gonna hit the algorithm?
We'll speak in code.
Okay.
There was a recent video that was posted that was taken down quite quickly, and we managed to get around it for we were apparently spreading not true. I'm trying to think of a different word
I
in
know what's
case
slang for the V word.
the what word? You say
V.
V?
V. Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking I, just a very basic like
Oh.
information.
Oh.
Maybe there's a long enough gap between it that their AI bots aren't picking up on that.
Oh.
They're like, oh, they're spreading insert here.
Yeah.
You guys,
Anyway,
it's tough out here. The AI bots cannot pick up on sarcasm, but
that
we
was
the
great.
horrors shall persist, and so shall
So
we.
shall we. We persist.
Yeah.
Okay, our bottom line, we'll wrap this up. One more thing I want to point out, we didn't really say this yet, but if someone ever says, like, this ingredient is poison, don't ever eat it, the burden of proof is on them to like explain why it's toxic and poisonous, yada, yada, yada. Like, if I don't know, let's see, if I was in the comments of Food Babe and she was saying red 40 is toxic, and I was like, no, it's not. And she was like, yes, it is. Prove it that it's not. No, the burden of proof is on her to prove what she had
Yeah,
said because she's the
you're
one making the
making this
claim.
very strong claim.
Exactly.
Also, make them list the ingredient and the dose.
That's the next point. What's the dose that red 40 becomes toxic? Because, yeah, totally. Anything's going to be toxic at a certain amount, but we can't just like make a blanket statement about it.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with our love, food science babe. We are her
She's a
biggest fans.
homie.
We love her so much. Go follow her. She has tons of content about this whole band in Europe thing. So if you just want to learn even more, because there is more to be said, she has lots of different content about it.
She's also much more patient than both of us, so
A lot less sighs and complaints,
she's much more
whining.
chill than both of us. So if you need some of that,
Oh, I don't know how she
let her
does it.
know. We love her.
All right,
Yeah.
guys. Banned. You know what's going to get banned?
Are we saying ban too much? Are we gonna get
Probably.
this taken down?
I was just going to say we're probably going to get banned. Whatever happens,
No,
happens.
I talked about banned books on a whole video, so and I was fine. So
Okay, that's true. You should be good. We should be good.
yeah.
Everything's great. Keep eating your
Happy,
delicious food.
happy things, YouTube. Happy th
YouTube, we love everybody. This is a happy place.
We are not spreading incorrect. I still don't want to say that word just because I'm
This is not controversial content.
they might not be able to pick that up. Oh, right, you're right. This is not controversial.
This is accepted by all.
All right, we'll let you go now that we pat it, we put our padding down, so
Our
hopefully
padding.
we're good. The algorithm won't take us out.
We're good now. Yeah.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Oh, but go listen to the bonus content on Substack. We're gonna go head over there
Yeah.
and not be as dreary.
Just chit
All
chat.
right,
Bye, guys.
bye.